The Forgotten Temple. The small research vessel Pathfinder drifted through the outer rim of the Kepler system, its sensors sweeping across the barren moon that orbited a gas giant. Captain Elena Rodriguez sat in the command chair, her dark eyes fixed on the display screen showing unusual energy readings. For 3 months, her team had been mapping unexplored territories, cataloging dead worlds and empty space. This moon was supposed to be just another lifeless rock in their database. "Captain, you're going to want to see this," called out Dr. Marcus Webb, the team's lead scientist. His voice carried an excitement that made Elena sit up straighter. Marcus rarely got excited about anything. Elena moved to his station and studied the data flowing across his screen. The readings showed a massive structure beneath the moon's surface, something that had been hidden for an impossibly long time. The energy signature was unlike anything in their databases, older than any known civilization. "How deep?" Elena asked. 2 kilometers down, but there's an entrance. "A tunnel system that leads directly to it," Marcus replied, his fingers dancing across the controls. "Captain, the architectural patterns don't match any species we know. This could be a first contact situation with a lost civilization." Elena felt her heart beat faster. First contact discoveries were rare, and finding evidence of an unknown ancient species could change everything humanity knew about galactic history. She turned to her crew, seeing the same anticipation reflected in their faces. "Prep the landing team. We go down in 1 hour," she ordered. The team consisted of 5 people. Elena led them, her experience as both a pilot and explorer making her the obvious choice. Marcus came along with his scientific equipment. Dr. Amira Osei, their xenoarchaeologist, carried scanning devices that would help date and analyze whatever they found. James Park, their engineer, brought tools for opening sealed doors or bypassing ancient security. Finally, Lieutenant Sarah Chen provided security, her weapon ready for any unexpected dangers. The tunnel entrance was a perfect circle carved into the moon's surface, so precise it looked like it had been made yesterday rather than eons ago. Their shuttle descended slowly, lights piercing the darkness as they moved deeper underground. The walls were smooth, almost crystalline, and they reflected the shuttle's lights in strange patterns. "I'm reading atmosphere inside the structure," James announced. "Breathable, surprisingly. Temperature is stable at 20 degrees. It's like someone left the environmental systems running." "That's impossible," Amira said. "Nothing could run for the amount of time these readings suggest. We're talking millions of years at minimum." They landed in a vast chamber that opened up before them like a cathedral. The ceiling stretched so high their lights couldn't reach it. Pillars rose from the floor, covered in symbols that seemed to shift and change when viewed from different angles. At the center of the chamber stood a raised platform, and on that platform sat a throne. The throne was beautiful in a way that defied description. It appeared to be carved from a single piece of material that looked like black glass but felt warm to the touch. The symbols that covered the pillars also covered the throne, glowing with a soft blue light that pulsed like a heartbeat. "My God," Amira whispered. "Do you see the craftsmanship? The precision? Whoever made this had technology far beyond what we have now." As they approached, their instruments began picking up strange readings. The throne was emitting a low-frequency signal, almost like it was calling out to something. Marcus set up his equipment and began recording everything. "Captain, I'm detecting movement," Sarah said suddenly, her hand moving to her weapon. "Something's approaching from the northern tunnel." Elena's team formed a defensive position as figures emerged from the shadows. They were not human. The newcomers were Vaxari, a reptilian species known for their aggressive expansion policies. Their scales gleamed in the blue light of the throne room, and their leader, a large male with red markings, stepped forward. "Humans," he hissed, his translator device making his words understandable. "You have found what we have been searching for. This temple belongs to the Vaxari Dominion now. Leave immediately." "This moon is in neutral space," Elena replied calmly. "We have as much right to explore it as you do." The Vaxari leader, who introduced himself as Commander Zrax, ignored her words and moved toward the throne. "For generations we have searched for the seat of the ancients. Legends say whoever claims this throne will gain access to technology beyond imagination. Power that will let my people rule the galaxy." Elena watched as Zrax approached the throne confidently. The symbols on its surface began glowing brighter, pulsing faster. Zrax reached out to touch it, his clawed hand mere inches from the armrest. Then the throne rejected him. A wave of force exploded outward, throwing Zrax backward through the air. He crashed into his own soldiers, and they all tumbled to the ground. The throne's light dimmed back to its gentle pulse as if nothing had happened. Zrax struggled to his feet, confusion and anger warring on his reptilian features. What happened? Why did it reject me? Before anyone could answer, more figures entered the chamber. These were selenites, a crystalline species that communicated through light patterns. Their leader approached the throne next, moving with grace and confidence. The result was the same. The throne rejected them violently, sending them flying backward. Over the next hour, representatives from 6 different species arrived at the temple. Word had spread quickly through the sector that something ancient had been discovered. Each species had their own legends about a lost throne, a seat of power left behind by beings called the Architects. Each one believed they were destined to claim it, and each one was thrown back by the throne's defense. Elena watched it all, her mind working through the puzzle. The throne was testing them somehow, judging them and finding them all wanting. But what was it looking for? What criteria determined worthiness? The symbols, Amira said suddenly. Captain, I've been studying the symbols on the throne. They're not just decorative. They're a language, and I think I'm starting to understand it. What do they say? Elena asked. They speak of the Architects, the first species to achieve faster-than-light travel in this galaxy. They built great cities on 1,000 worlds. But they also speak of something else, a test. The throne was left as a gift for those who would come after, but only the worthy could claim it. Worthy how? Marcus asked. Amira shook her head. I'm not sure yet. The language is complex, but there's something about remaining unchanged, about staying true to original form. Elena looked at the various alien species gathered in the chamber. The Vexari had augmented themselves with cybernetic implants. The Selenites were silicon-based life that had evolved far from carbon origins. The other species present had all modified themselves extensively, adapting to space travel through genetic engineering or mechanical enhancement. Humans had done some of that too, but compared to other species, humanity had remained relatively natural. Medical advances had extended lifespans and cured diseases, but the core human genome remained unchanged. It was considered primitive by many species, a sign of humanity's youth and inexperience. Elena approached the throne slowly, her team calling out warnings. The aliens watched with curiosity and skepticism. A human attempting what their superior species had failed seemed absurd to them. Captain, we don't know what will happen, Sarah warned. I know, Elena replied, but someone needs to try, and I think I understand what it's looking for. She stood before the throne, feeling the energy radiating from it. The symbols began glowing brighter, responding to her presence. Elena could feel the throne scanning her, reading her DNA, measuring something she couldn't name. Then, without fully understanding why, Elena sat down. The chamber exploded with light. Not the violent rejection the others had experienced, but a brilliant illumination that filled every corner of the ancient temple. The symbols on the throne blazed with golden radiance, and that same light began flowing into Elena. She felt it enter her mind, vast and ancient, carrying knowledge that had been waiting for millions of years. Images flooded her consciousness. She saw the Architects in their glory, beings who looked remarkably human but not quite. She understood why now. The Architects had seeded life across the galaxy, including on Earth. They had guided evolution on hundreds of worlds, hoping their children would one day reach the stars. But most of those children had changed themselves beyond recognition, altering their genetics until they shared almost nothing with their creators. Only humanity, isolated on Earth for so long, had remained close to the original template, close enough for the throne to recognize them as true descendants. The light faded gradually, and Elena opened her eyes. The chamber was silent. Every alien present stared at her in shock. The throne had accepted her. More than that, it had bonded with her. She could feel its systems connected to her mind, waiting for her commands. Impossible, Zrax breathed. Humans are primitive. How could they be chosen? Elena stood slowly, her legs shaky. Because we stayed close to what the Architects were. We didn't change ourselves as much as you did. The throne doesn't care about advancement or power. It cares about heritage. The temple around them began to awaken fully. Lights activated throughout the massive structure. Ancient machinery hummed to life after millions of years of silence. Doors opened in the walls. revealing chambers filled with technology beyond current understanding. Marcus was already moving toward the nearest chamber, his scientific curiosity overwhelming his caution. "Captain, these systems are incredible. The data storage alone could contain the complete knowledge of the architect's civilization." But Elena barely heard him. Her mind was still processing what the throne had shown her. This wasn't just one temple. The architects had left 12 such places scattered across the galaxy, each one containing pieces of their legacy. And now, as the first person accepted by a throne, Elena had become the key to unlocking them all. The implications were staggering. Humanity, the youngest spacefaring species, had just become the most important. Every faction in the galaxy would want access to what the architects had left behind. Some would negotiate. Others would threaten or attack. The peace humanity had worked so hard to maintain would be tested like never before. Commander Zarak stepped forward, his posture aggressive. "This changes nothing. The Vaxari will not accept human control of architect technology. Surrender the throne now or face the consequences." Before Elena could respond, the throne acted on its own. Defensive systems activated, and energy shields materialized around the chamber. Weapons that had been hidden in the walls emerged, targeting every alien present but leaving the humans untouched. "I wouldn't do that if I were you," Elena said quietly. "The throne has accepted me as guardian. It will protect me and this place from any threats. You can't take it by force." The tension in the chamber was thick enough to cut. Elena could see the calculations happening behind Zrax's eyes. He wanted to attack, but the defensive systems around him promised certain death if he tried. Finally, Zrax stepped back. "This isn't over, human. The Dominion will return with a fleet. We will see how well your ancient toys protect you against modern warships." He and his soldiers retreated, followed gradually by the other alien groups. They left in anger and frustration, but they left. Elena knew they would be back, probably with weapons and threats. The easy part was over. Now came the hard part, figuring out what to do with the power she had accidentally claimed. As the last aliens departed, Elena's team gathered around her. They looked at their captain with new eyes, realizing that everything had changed. Sarah spoke first, her voice concerned. "What do we do now, Captain?" Elena looked at the throne, feeling its ancient presence in her mind. She thought about the architects' hopes for their children, about the responsibility that had been placed on her shoulders, about humanity's future in a galaxy that had just become much more complicated. "We call Earth," Elena said finally. "We tell them what we found, and then we figure out how to do this right. The architects left this legacy for all their children, not just us. We need to make sure it's used to bring species together, not drive them apart." Marcus was already setting up long-range communications. Amira continued documenting the temple's wonders. James examined the defensive systems with professional interest. Sarah took up a guard position, her weapon ready for trouble, and Elena sat back down on the throne, feeling its power flow through her, and wondered if she was strong enough to carry the weight of an ancient civilization's final gift. The lights of the temple burned bright, casting away millions of years of darkness. The architects had been gone for longer than human civilization had existed, but their legacy lived on, waiting in the dark places of the galaxy, waiting for someone worthy to find it. That someone, against all odds, had been human. Now Elena had to prove that humanity deserved the honor. The throne had accepted her, but acceptance was only the beginning. The real test would come when the galaxy learned what she had found and decided whether to work with humanity or try to take what the architects had left behind by force. The ancient symbols on the throne pulsed steadily, like a heartbeat returning after a long sleep. The temple was awake. The legacy was claimed, and nothing in the galaxy would ever be the same. The Awakening. The message reached Earth 3 days after Elena claimed the throne. By the 4th day, the entire human government was in emergency session. By the 5th day, 7 alien fleets had arrived at the moon, surrounding it like predators circling prey. Elena watched them on the temple's newly activated sensor displays, counting warships and measuring their firepower. The numbers were not encouraging. 43 vessels total, Sarah reported, studying the tactical screen. Vaxari Dominion has the most 18 ships, including 3 dreadnoughts. The Selenite Collective sent 12. Then we have smaller groups from the Karathi, the Then, and 3 other species. They're maintaining a perimeter but not attacking yet. They're waiting to see what we'll do, Marcus said from his position at one of the architect consoles. He had spent the last 3 days learning to interface with the ancient systems, and his eyes held the exhaustion of someone who had barely slept. They want to know if we can actually use what we found before they risk an assault. Elena felt the throne's presence in her mind like a constant hum. It had shown her so much over the past days, flooding her consciousness with knowledge about the architects and their technology. She understood things now that would take human scientists decades to figure out. She could read the alien symbols as easily as English. She knew how to activate defensive grids that could vaporize entire fleets. But understanding how to use power and deciding whether to use it were different things entirely. The architects had left this legacy as a gift for their descendants, not as a weapon of conquest. Elena had to remember that even when threatened. "Captain, incoming transmission," James announced. "It's from Earth, priority alpha clearance. The Secretary General wants to speak with you directly." Elena took a deep breath and accepted the call. Secretary General Patricia Morrison's face appeared on the screen, her expression grave. Behind her, Elena could see officials from multiple governments and military advisors crowding the command center. "Captain Rodriguez, the situation has escalated beyond our initial projections. 6 more alien fleets are en route to your position. Several council members are calling for the temple to be declared neutral territory under galactic law. Others are threatening war if humanity doesn't surrender what you found." "And what does Earth want me to do, Madam Secretary?" Elena asked. Morrison's face softened slightly. "Earth wants you to stay alive, Captain. Beyond that, we're debating fiercely. Some want you to defend the temple at all costs. Others think we should negotiate, share the technology in exchange for peace. The military is preparing response fleets, but they won't arrive for another week at minimum. Until then, you're on your own." "Understood. Is there anything else?" "Yes, whatever you decide, Captain, make it count. Humanity's future might depend on the choice you make in the next few hours." Morrison out. The transmission ended, leaving Elena with her team in the vast throne room. The ancient chamber had become their home over the past days, its systems providing food, water, and breathable air through technology they barely understood. The architects had built their temples to last forever, and it showed in every perfect detail. Amira approached Elena, her tablet filled with translations of architect texts. "Captain, I've been studying their history, trying to understand why they left. The architects achieved something called transcendence. They evolved beyond physical form into beings of pure energy. Before they left, they wanted to ensure their children, the species they had seeded across the galaxy, would have the tools to follow the same path eventually. But most of those children changed themselves too much," Elena said, the knowledge from the throne flowing into her words. "They modified their genetics, merged with machines, altered their fundamental nature. The architects worried that species who strayed too far from organic baseline couldn't achieve transcendence safely. It requires a connection to the original pattern. So humanity's primitiveness is actually an advantage," Marcus said with a slight smile. "We're valuable because we didn't advance in the ways other species did." "That's going to make a lot of people angry." An alarm sounded through the temple. Sarah was immediately at the tactical display, her face hardening. "Captain, the Vaxari fleet is moving. They're taking an attack formation." Elena stood and walked to the display, seeing the 18 Vaxari ships arranging themselves in assault pattern. Their weapons were powering up, energy signatures spiking on the sensors. Commander Zirax's patience had apparently run out. "Incoming transmission from the Vaxari flagship," James announced. "Put it through," Elena ordered. Zirax's reptilian face filled the screen, his red markings seeming darker than before. "Human Captain, the Dominion has lost patience with your claims. You will deactivate the temple's defenses and surrender control immediately. You have 10 minutes to comply. If you refuse, we will demonstrate what happens to primitives who grasp at power beyond their understanding." Elena felt anger rise in her chest, but she kept her voice calm. "Commander, this temple doesn't belong to you or to me. The architects left it for all their descendants. I'm willing to share what's here, to work with all species to understand this legacy together, but I won't surrender it to someone who only wants it for conquest. Then you choose death. Your funeral will serve as a warning to others who stand between the Dominion and our destiny." Zirax cut the transmission. The 10 minutes began counting down on the displays. Elena's team looked at her, waiting for orders. The throne whispered in her mind, showing her exactly how to activate the defensive systems. She could destroy the Vaxari fleet with a thought. The temple's weapons were millions of years more advanced than anything currently in space. It would be simple, efficient, and absolutely devastating. But it would also prove Zrax right. It would show the galaxy that whoever controlled architect technology was too dangerous to negotiate with. It would start a war that humanity couldn't win, not against the combined might of species who had been traveling the stars for thousands of years. "Captain, we need to make a decision," Sarah said urgently. 8 minutes left. Elena closed her eyes and reached deeper into the throne's knowledge. There had to be another way. Something the architects had planned for exactly this situation. They had been wise, far-seeing. They wouldn't have left their legacy without safeguards against misuse. Then she found it buried deep in the temple's systems, a protocol the architects had created for moments when their children fought over their gifts instead of sharing them. It was risky, perhaps even dangerous, but it offered a path forward that didn't involve bloodshed. "I need everyone to trust me," Elena said, opening her eyes. "What I'm about to do might look like surrender, but it's not. The architects left a way to prove worthiness beyond just sitting on the throne, a test that any species can attempt, one that will demonstrate once and for all who deserves access to this legacy." "What kind of test?" Marcus asked. "One that measures not genetic heritage, but character. The throne accepted me because of my DNA, but the architects knew that genetics alone don't determine worthiness. They built a trial system into each temple, a challenge that tests whether someone values knowledge over power, cooperation over domination." "And you want to invite the aliens to try this test?" Sarah looked skeptical. "Captain, they're about to attack us, which is exactly why we need to do this. If I destroy the Vaxari fleet, every species in the galaxy will see humanity as a threat. But if I offer them a fair chance to prove themselves, if I show we're willing to share rather than hoard, then maybe we can change the dynamic." James checked his console. 5 minutes, Captain." Elena moved to the throne and sat down, feeling its connection deepen. She accessed the temple's communication arrays and opened a channel to every ship in orbit. Her voice would carry to all of them simultaneously, human and alien alike. "This is Captain Elena Rodriguez. I'm addressing all vessels currently surrounding this moon. You came here seeking the legacy of the architects. You believe your species deserves access to their knowledge and technology. I'm offering you the chance to prove it." She paused, letting her words sink in. "The throne room contains a trial system, a test designed by the architects themselves. Any representative from any species can attempt it. The test doesn't care about genetics or physical strength. It measures wisdom, compassion, and the ability to value life over power. If you pass, you gain the same access I have. If you fail, you leave unharmed but empty-handed." Commander Zrax's face appeared on one of the screens, fury evident in his expression. "More human tricks. You're trying to buy time until your reinforcements arrive." "No tricks, Commander. I'm offering you exactly what you wanted, a chance to claim the architect's legacy, but you have to earn it through character, not violence. The choice is yours. Attack and face the temple's defenses, or send a representative to attempt the trial. Either way, you'll learn whether you're truly worthy of what the architects left behind." The channel filled with multiple voices as alien captains conferred with their governments. Elena watched the countdown timer. 3 minutes remained before Zrax's deadline expired. The Vaxari ships held their attack formation, weapons still charged and ready. Then, surprisingly, a new voice entered the channel. It was translated from light patterns, marking it as Selenite communication. "Captain Rodriguez, the Selenite Collective accepts your offer. We will send our representative. If this is genuine, it changes everything. If it is a trap, the consequences will be severe." "Understood. The trial is genuine. Send your representative to the temple entrance. My people will guide them to the trial chamber." Other species began accepting as well. The Karathi, the Then, even some of the smaller factions expressed willingness to attempt the trial. Only the Vaxari remained silent, their ships unmoving in their aggressive formation. 1 minute, Captain," James warned. Elena addressed Zrax directly. "Commander, you have 1 minute to decide. Attack and prove you're nothing more than a warmonger, or send someone to attempt the trial and show that the Dominion values wisdom as much as strength. What will history remember about this moment?" The seconds ticked down. 50, 40, 30. Elena's hand hovered over the defensive controls, ready to activate them if necessary. She didn't want to kill anyone, but she would protect her team and the temple if forced. 20 seconds. 10. Hold fire, Zrax growled suddenly. The Dominion will send a representative. But if this is deception, human, your species will pay dearly. Elena released a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. No deception, Commander. Just an honest test of character. Over the next hours, representatives from 7 species arrived at the temple. Elena's team guided them to a chamber adjacent to the throne room, a place that had remained sealed until Elena activated the trial protocols. The chamber was circular, its walls covered in the same flowing symbols that marked the throne. At its center stood a crystalline structure that pulsed with soft light. The Selenite representative went first, a being of living crystal named Harmonizer 7. It approached the crystalline structure cautiously, following Elena's instructions. The moment it touched the structure, the trial began. Holographic images filled the chamber showing Harmonizer 7 a scenario. A ship in distress caught in a gravity well. The Selenite had the power to save them, but doing so would require sacrificing valuable cargo and risking its own vessel. The scenario played out, showing the consequences of both choices: save the ship and lose profit, or abandon them and maintain resources. Harmonizer 7 chose to save the ship without hesitation. The hologram showed the grateful survivors, but also showed the Selenite's company suffering financial losses because of the decision. Then the trial asked a question, projected directly into Harmonizer 7's consciousness. Would you make the same choice if you knew the losses would be permanent? The Selenite's light patterns flickered, showing internal conflict. Finally, it pulsed an answer. Yes, life has value beyond material calculation. The crystalline structure flashed bright, and knowledge flooded into Harmonizer 7's mind. Not everything the throne had given Elena, but enough. Access to basic architect technologies, understanding of their language, ability to interface with their systems at a fundamental level. The Selenite had passed the first trial. The other representatives watched this with growing understanding. The architect's test wasn't about species superiority. It was about individual character, about choosing compassion over profit, life over convenience. It was a test anyone could pass, regardless of their genetic makeup or technological advancement. The Karathi representative went next, facing a different scenario tailored to their species' values. They passed. The Then representative attempted the trial and failed, choosing strategic advantage over innocent lives. They were ejected from the chamber unharmed, but carrying no knowledge. 2 more species passed. 1 failed. Then came the Vaxari representative, a younger warrior named Krex. Zrax had chosen him specifically, Elena suspected, because Krex was known for his ambition and cunning. The commander wanted the knowledge, but probably expected his soldier to do whatever was necessary to obtain it. Krex's trial was harsh. The hologram showed him a scenario where he could gain immense power for the Dominion by betraying allies, by letting thousands die to secure strategic advantage. It showed him the rewards: promotion, wealth, glory. It also showed him the faces of those who would die because of his choice, individuals with families and dreams, people who trusted him. Elena watched Krex struggle with the decision. She could see the conflict in his body language, the way his claws flexed and his tail lashed. He was a warrior trained to value Dominion success above all else, but he was also someone capable of seeing beyond his conditioning. The trial waited patiently. Time had no meaning here. Krex could take hours to decide if needed. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, he made his choice. He rejected the power. He chose to protect the innocent even at cost to his Dominion. The crystalline structure blazed with approval, and Krex gasped as knowledge flooded his mind. When he emerged from the chamber, his eyes held a different quality. He had gained not just architect knowledge, but understanding of why that knowledge had been locked away. Power without wisdom was destruction. Technology without compassion was tyranny. Commander Zrax was furious when Krex reported back. Elena could hear the shouting over the communication channels. The commander had expected his warrior to take the quick path to power, and instead Krex had chosen the harder road. But Zrax couldn't punish him for it, not when the entire galaxy was watching. Over the next days, more representatives arrived. Word spread quickly that the architect's trial was genuine. that any species could gain access to their legacy through demonstrated character. Ships that had come for conquest began sending diplomats instead. The siege turned into a pilgrimage. Not everyone passed. Many failed, choosing power or profit over compassion, but enough succeeded that a new dynamic emerged. Species that passed the trial gained partial access to architect knowledge, enough to advance their civilizations but not enough to dominate others. Elena, as the throne's primary guardian, maintained ultimate authority over the temple's full capabilities. But she was no longer alone in understanding the architect's legacy. Earth's response fleet arrived a week later, only to find the situation completely changed. Instead of a war zone, they encountered a diplomatic assembly. Representatives from dozens of species were working together, sharing information, learning from the architect's teachings. Humanity's status had shifted from youngest species to respected mediator, the guardians of a legacy that belonged to everyone who proved themselves worthy. Secretary General Morrison contacted Elena personally. "Captain, I don't know how you did it, but you've changed everything. The galactic community is talking about reforming the entire council structure around the trial system. Species that previously refused to cooperate are now working together. You've created something extraordinary." Elena sat on the throne, feeling its ancient wisdom flowing through her. "I didn't create it, Madam Secretary." The architects did. They understood that their children would fight over their gifts unless there was a way to teach them cooperation. The throne accepted me because of my genetics, but the trial accepts anyone with the right character. That was their genius all along. Marcus approached with a datapad showing the latest discoveries. "Captain, we've managed to access deeper archive levels. There are 11 more temples like this one scattered across the galaxy. Each one holds different aspects of architect knowledge. Together they form a complete picture of their civilization. And each one probably has its own trials," Elena said thoughtfully. The architects wanted to ensure that knowledge spread slowly, carefully, only to those who demonstrated they could handle it responsibly. Sarah was monitoring communications when she suddenly looked up. "Captain, we're getting a transmission from deep space. The origin point is moving impossibly fast, faster than any known propulsion system, and the signal is in architect language." Elena felt the throne respond to her surprise, showing her the translation before James could process it through the computers. The message was simple but profound. "Greetings, children. You have begun to understand. Continue seeking wisdom over power, and perhaps one day you will join us in transcendence. We watch with hope." The transmission ended as quickly as it began. Elena and her team stared at each other in wonder. The architects weren't completely gone. They had ascended, evolved beyond physical form, but they still watched their children. They still cared what happened to the species they had seeded across the stars. Amira's voice was filled with awe. "They're still out there somewhere in a form we can't even comprehend. And they're proud of what we did here. Not just us," Elena corrected. "Everyone who passed the trial. Everyone who chose compassion over conquest. The architects are proud of all their children who remember the values they tried to teach." The throne room fell into contemplative silence. Outside, ships from 100 species maintained peaceful orbit, no longer predators but pilgrims. Inside, a human captain who had accidentally claimed an ancient throne realized that she hadn't been chosen by chance. The architects had waited millions of years for the right moment, for the right person, for the right circumstances to awaken their legacy. Humanity's youth and supposed primitiveness had been advantages. Staying close to natural genetics had made Elena compatible with the throne. But more importantly, humanity's struggles, its history of conflict and eventual cooperation, had taught values that aligned with what the architects hoped to pass on. Earth's long isolation had preserved something precious, a reminder that advancement didn't require abandoning the qualities that made a species worth advancing. Elena stood and addressed her team. "We have work ahead of us. 11 more temples to find and activate. Thousands of species who need to learn about the trials. A galaxy that needs to be convinced that cooperation serves everyone better than competition. The architects left us tools to build a better future, but we have to do the building ourselves." "Where do we start?" Marcus asked. Elena smiled. "We start by being worthy of the trust placed in us. We share what we know. We help others pass the trials. We prove that the architects were right to leave their legacy in our hands, and we do it together, human and alien alike, all children of the same ancient parents." The temple's lights pulsed in approval. ancient systems responding to words that honored their creator's intentions. The throne had accepted Elena because of her genetics, but the galaxy was accepting humanity because of their actions, and that, Elena understood, was exactly what the architects had hoped for all along. The lost throne had found its heir. The lights had returned after millions of years of darkness, and across the stars, other temples waited to be awakened, each one holding pieces of a puzzle that would unite the galaxy's children in ways they had never imagined possible. The age of conquest was ending. The age of cooperation was beginning, and humanity, youngest and least advanced of all spacefaring species, stood at the center of it all, guardians of a legacy that would reshape the future of every civilization in the cosmos.